I want to hold your hand when I say this, but how often do you say, I'll take care of myself later, but then later never comes? You're telling yourself that once I get X, Y, and Z, then I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do all these amazing things for myself, maybe get a massage, watch some TV, journal. But then after a day of giving and giving and giving, you have nothing left. There's no energy for yourself. There's no space for you to even think about how I can take care of myself. And so this year, I really want for you to prioritize you. That's what this video is going to be. Not about doing more, but how you can do differently. So I know that everybody on social media is looking at Pinterest boards and creating these beautiful vision boards, maybe even bingo cards. I'm all in support of that. But if you're not able to really identify what's keeping you stuck so that you can do something differently, so you can choose better for yourself, then you're just going to stay in that endless cycle. So in today's video, I'm going to be really talking about ways that you can create that shift for you in a healthy way so that you're just not repeating that cycle. So before sitting down to film, I was actually journaling myself. That's why I got my little setup and my tea here. Feel free to grab your journal because I am going to be asking yourself some questions. I am going to be putting it on the screen. I'll also link some resources down in the description box below. As we're unpacking, I really want you to be intentional about your journey and what you're putting into it so that you can have that impact, not only in just within yourself, but also in your kids' lives, in your employees' lives, at work, friendships, just overall, just being able to show up as a self that you're proud of because you're taking care of yourself. And so you can also show up as your best self as well. So the first stop on this journey toward finally prioritizing yourself starts with the mindset. It starts with the beliefs because that's the foundation of our actions and shape how we also navigate this world. And so I'm going to ask you a tough question. This is where the journaling part comes in. When you're not prioritizing yourself, what are you avoiding? Might be the fear of being selfish because we know society loves to tell women that if they take care of themselves, that they're selfish. It might be because you're uncomfortable with boundaries. So you just give and give and give because you don't know how to say no. Maybe it's easier to sit with other people's needs than to sit with your own. This one is the one that had me writing for my life and my journal because I remember being taught how to cook, how to clean, how to change diapers, all of these things that weren't for my benefit for taking care of me. I wouldn't call that self-care, but to be able to take care of others. How can I be supportive to others? How can I meet other people's needs? And so for me, there was this thought process and this belief that my value is equal to how I can take care of others. So I had to do a lot of inner work within myself so that I can give myself the space and the freedom to say, okay, no, I deserve this, not because I completed my whole to-do list, but because I exist. You getting this theme? It's all about being able to take care of you so that you can show up the way that you want to. And when you neglect yourself, it doesn't mean that you show up better. In fact, you're just most likely operating in survival mode and just operating from these old beliefs that you learned in childhood that no longer serve you now. The next step is to rewrite the stories that you've been telling yourself. This is a process that I walk my clients through all the time because it's so informative for you to be able to create that shift, right? We have the past. Look, that's my past. That's the behind me. The past where that's the childhood beliefs, right? The things that shape who we are. And then in the present, that's how we're showing up actively. And that's where we're going to be working to rewrite it so that in the future, you see me, I'm pointing ahead. So in the future, you're able to show up in a different way, AKA break that cycle so you prioritize yourself. So right now, when you think of prioritizing yourself, it's time to bring out that handy dandy notebook. When it's time for you to prioritize yourself, what are the stories that you're telling yourself? Maybe it could be that if I stop taking care of people, maybe they'll treat me differently. Or maybe it might be if I slow down that I'll actually fall behind. That's a part of that hustle culture that so many of us find ourselves falling into. Are these stories that I can actually start telling myself differently so that I can move differently? Maybe your whole friend group is completely different than before, but you're still operating the same because you haven't identified that there's been a shift. And so you can also grow and change as well. So it's so important to think about these stories because it allows you to step into an empowered position and be able to say, hey, the stories that I'm telling myself don't quite fit right now, and I need to tell myself different ones. So continue in the process of rewriting those stories that you're telling yourself. Now it's time to challenge them. Who taught you that your needs come last? Whose approval are you still chasing? These are so important for you to be able to say these no longer serve me. This is not how I want to operate. For me, when I was doing my early inner work, this sent me all the way back to my mama. And I was like, oh, we got to take a pit stop here because this is going to take a little minute, right? As I keep talking, a theme is going to be, man, we're not doing more, we're doing it differently. And to do it differently, you have to be aware of where these beliefs come from. One of my favorite journal prompts to ask my clients is, what would life be like if you prioritized yourself? Oftentimes, there's a pause because it's a question that A, nobody has ever asked them, and B, they've never taken time to think about it. They've never thought about their world in a different way. They've always decentered themselves and centered everybody else around them. And so the very thought of creating that shift is foreign to them. It's most times they can't even come up with the words. So after we've identified, we've challenged, now it's time to rewrite that story with action. So I want you to challenge yourself to set one, maybe two if you're feeling real good at the top of this new year. I want you to have one thing that you do for yourself. It might be 1 hour of quiet time where you're journaling and you're sipping tea. It might be that you're gonna go on a walk for yourself for 30 minutes by yourself, no kids, no partner, no nothing, no work. Because it's important for you to be able to start that process, because every time that you do an action of self-love, of self-care, and prioritize yourself, you're rewriting that story that says that those things don't matter. And when you're able to rewrite those stories, you're able to live differently. In this next step, it's going to be building the courage to choose yourself daily. I know that can sound so foreign. I'm a mom of 3 and I have a husband. And so it can be really overwhelming to say, oh yes, I'm going to choose myself daily. But it becomes a habit like anything else, whether it's drinking water, clocking in and out of work every day, going to pick your kids up. It can be a habit for you to do, but you have to create that shift. So I love using this analogy because I ran track most of my life. And so as an athlete, you have a muscle. And so if you don't use the muscle, it gets weak. That's where that inconsistency for practicing self-care and prioritizing yourself comes. But if you're able to do it more and more and more, that muscle becomes stronger. There's memory in your muscles, there's memory in your mind. And so even when you have resistance, even when you have days where you feel tired or it's that time of the month, you're like, I still have to make this a practice because it becomes a non-negotiable for you. You recognize that I'm better when I do it than when I don't do it. When it comes to prioritizing yourself, it's saying that I don't want to survive anymore. I actually want to thrive. I actually want to dream and expand and to grow. And I can only do that if I take care of myself. So often people are getting sick, and it's because of stress. It's because they're not taking care of themselves. Their body and their mind are sending so many red flags and they're constantly ignoring them. So I want for this year, as you're on this journey, to say, I want to make myself a promise. One way that I solidify this promise to myself is through journaling. It don't happen every day. It happen most days where I'm able to reflect on how I feel. And I start to write and I'm like, man, it ain't all this bad, is it? But then I realize that it's because I haven't been taking care of myself. So my mind is really just focusing on the negative and then on the struggles because I haven't replenished. I haven't decompressed. I haven't added value in taking care of me in a way that only I know that I can. It's great. It's cool if other people do acts of love for me, but it has to start with me. And so this is what holds me accountable and grounded mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So you have to find what's going to help ground you to keep that promise for you, because that's how you're going to make it a daily practice. That's how you're going to build that muscle. And that's how you're going to have that courage to continue to prioritize you, even when there's resistance from people who love you, from strangers, from your kids, from everybody. If you're like, man, I really want to get into journaling, but it's a struggle, don't worry, I got you. I have other videos in the description box below, also some other resources that can really help you take advantage of this powerful tool. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And so I want you to know that in order for you to have a different relationship with yourself, you have to do something different. This year, the message is not about fixing fixing everything. You're not a project. That's not what this is about. It's about being in alignment with yourself, choosing yourself each and every day. It's about saying yes to me in small ways and big ways each and every day. I can almost guarantee that if you choose yourself each and every day in these ways, these intentional shifts, that you're going to look back and say, man, I am so different than how I started. I'm a different person. I feel differently. I have different beliefs. I see myself differently. And most importantly, I show up differently. And I'm hoping that that means joy for you. I hope that means in a beautiful way that you're loving the person that you're becoming. If you made it this far, then you're the real MVP. I do have other videos that can also support you over here and over here, but I want to hear from you down in the comments. What's one way that you're going to be committed to yourself this year on your journey toward prioritizing you? Let's start this conversation, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.